Hello everyone! It's time for another one of our magnificent and marvelous math lessons with Miss Antonia Bain. Let's get started.
Today's topic is multiplying fractions by whole numbers. Let's begin by looking at our lesson objectives. By the end of this lesson, students will be able to multiply a fraction by a whole number, simplify fractions, and compose multiplication sentences based on fraction models. Let's do a quick review. In our last lesson, we learned how to multiply a fraction by a fraction. Can you do this for me very quickly? What is 3/5 multiplied by 7/9? If you said 21/45, you are correct. However, that fraction can be simplified. And when we simplify that by the factor of 3, we get 7 out of 15. 7/15. Let's look now at multiplying a fraction by a whole number. Suppose now we want to multiply 3/5 by 7. Well, when we multiply a fraction by a whole number, there are 5 basic easy steps that we must follow. Let's take a look at what they are. The steps to multiplying a fraction by a whole number are: 1. We must first convert the whole number to a fraction. 2. We then multiply the numerators. Then, you guessed it, multiply the denominators. After that, our 4th step tells us that we change the improper fraction we will have to a mixed fraction. And then, of course, we simplify if needed. So let's look back at our fraction. 3/5 times 7. Step 1 says that we convert the whole number to a fraction. To do that, we place the number over 1. Let's take a look at how this looks. Wonderful! So now we have 3/5 times 7 out of 1. Step 2 says that we multiply the numerators. 3 times 7 is equal to 21. Yes. Now, step 3 tells us we multiply the denominators. 5 times 1 is equal to 5. I see that improper fraction. I hope you do. So, our 4th step tells us that we change the improper fraction to a mixed fraction. To do that, we ask ourselves, how many groups of 5 can we get out of 21? When we answer that question, we get 4 groups of 5 out of 21. 4 times 5 is 20. How much is left over? 1. That becomes our numerator, and our denominator stays the same. So when we change 21/5 into a mixed number, we get 4 and 1/5. Step 5 says that we now simplify if needed. Remember, when we simplify, we ask ourselves, can this go lower? Can it be reduced? When we look at this fraction, we know that that cannot be reduced. Why? Because that is our final answer. This fraction is already in its simplest form. Let's take a look at this. Multiply these fractions. I'm sure you remember this from our last lesson. Remember, in order to multiply these fractions, we must first identify the fraction represented by the model shown. Let's look at our first grouping. That represents the number 4. Why? Because there are 4 whole fraction models shaded. So 4 is our whole number. Let's look at now our next model. What fraction is represented by that model? You guessed it, 7 out of 8. 7/8. So now we must multiply 4 by 7/8, multiplying a fraction by a whole number. Step 1 says that we convert the whole number to a fraction, and we do that by placing it over 1. So we now have 4 out of 1 multiplied by 7 out of 8. Step 2 says that we multiply our numerators. 4 times 7 is, you guessed it, 28. Step 3 says that we multiply our denominators. 1 times 8 is equal to 8. Very good job, guys. Now we must convert our improper fraction to a mixed number. How do we do that? We ask ourselves, how many groups of 8 can we get out of 28? That becomes our whole number, which is 3. 8 times 3 is 24. So we get 3 groups of 8 out of 28. How much is left over? Correct, 4. That becomes my numerator, and 8. My denominator stays the same. Awesome job, guys. Now let's look at step number 5. Step 5 tells us that we must simplify if needed. Can 3 and 4/8 be simplified? Can this go lower? Can it be reduced? Well, the answer is yes. When we simplify 3 and 4/8, our final answer is going to be 3 and 1/2. What factor did we simplify by? We simplified by the factor of 4. Good. Try this on your own. 11 times 1/2. I know you can do it, boys and girls. If you're finished, your answer should be 11 as your numerator and guess what? 2 as your denominator. Awesome job! But we're not done yet. Once you got that, you should have changed that into a, you guessed it, mixed fraction. And when I do that, I have 5 groups of 2 in 11. That becomes my whole number. 1 is left over. That becomes my numerator. And you guessed it, my denominator stays the same. So my final answer is 5.5. Let's do a quick review. We know that there are 5 steps to multiplying fractions by a whole number. What are they? First, we must convert the whole number to a fraction by, you guessed it, placing it over 1. Then, we multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators, change the improper fraction to a mixed fraction, and then simplify if needed. Awesome job! This lesson was created by Miss Antonia Bain.